Okay, so yesterday we dealt with, and I'll do just a brief summary of it, we dealt with the question of whether Sefirat HaOmer nowadays is biblical or rabbinic. And we noted that at first glance it seems to hang on the question of how do you understand the connection between Sefirat HaOmer and the Karban HaOmer. And we noted that there are basically three different ways of taking it. There's two extremes, right? One is that Sefirat HaOmer depends, the mitzvah of Sefirat HaOmer biblically depends on the actual bringing of the Karban HaOmer, in which case, nowadays, when you don't bring the Karban HaOmer, there's no biblical mitzvah to count, and it's only rabbinic. All the way the other extreme is to say that the mitzvah of Sefirat HaOmer is completely independent of the Karban HaOmer, and therefore nowadays it's obviously still biblical, and we noted that that type of conception could be taken if you thought that Sefirat HaOmer was more about counting towards Matan Torah or something like that. The middle model, which we saw variations of in Reb Chaim and the Keren Ora within the Rambam, is to say that the counting of the Omer doesn't depend on the actual bringing of the Omer, but it depends only on the theoretical chiyuv, right? The ability in theory to bring the Karban HaOmer. So even though nowadays we don't actually bring the Omer, since we're still obligated to bring the Omer, or the Beit HaMikdash's Kedusha is still there, even the Beit HaMikdash doesn't exist, and therefore it's something that exists in potential, so therefore it's biblical to bring to count the Omer even nowadays. And we noted, so now if we turn here to source 1, that the Gemara has this short little sugya in Samach Vav, where the Gemara says that Gufa Amar Abaye mitzvah lemimne yomei u'mitzvah lemimne shavu'ei. Abaye had said that the mitzvah of Sefirat HaOmer is to count weeks and days, the way we do. Right? Hayom yom, hayom shmonei yamim shem shavua echad v'yom echad laOmer, or at least hayom sheva yamim shem shavua echad laOmer. So Abaye says you count days and weeks. Rabbanan deber Rav Ashi manu yomei umane shavuei, and following that, the Beit Midrash of Rav Ashi indeed counted days and weeks. But Ameimar mane yomei v'lo mane shavuei. Ameimar counted days and did not count weeks. Why? OMER Zecher Mikdash hu, because he said it is merely a commemoration of the temple, and therefore he holds that you only keep the mitzvah in a partial way. So this is what I want to analyze today, probably today and tomorrow, my guess. It is the following question. So, what is the machloket between Abaye and Ameimar? Ameimar says that nowadays you count days and weeks. Abaye says you don't, because it's a commemoration of the Mikdash. So we know that according to Abaye, it's only rabbinic nowadays, presumably because he thinks that the Karban depends on, that the counting depends on the Karban. But, what about us? When we count days and weeks, so what do we hold? So as we noted yesterday, the fact that we count days and weeks can lead you to one of two conclusions. Either it leads you to conclude that we think that Sefirat HaOmer is still biblical, like the Rambam. But what's the other possibility? This is what I want to focus on today. Tosfot doesn't think this is true. Tosfot thinks that we count days and weeks, and yet we only think it's rabbinic. Therefore, according to Tosfot, the machloket between Ameimar and Abaye is not whether Sefirat HaOmer is rabbinic, whether it's a Zecher Mikdash, but it's what type of rabbinic law is this? Or, alternatively, what type of Zecher Mikdash is this? What type of commemoration of the Mikdash is it? Ameimar thinks that, Abaye thinks that it's merely a commemoration of the Mikdash, and therefore the best way to commemorate it is to do something symbolic but incomplete. Meaning, in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, you would have counted days and weeks, And nowadays, because it's only a commemoration, so you count only one, you count only days. But OMER says, even though it's a Zecher Mikdash, you still count the exact way you would have in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, days and weeks. So to understand this machloket according to Tosfot, who thinks that everybody agrees that this is rabbinic, and everybody agrees...
Just count weeks.
What?
OMER just says count weeks, not both.
What did I say?
You said he says you should count.
Sorry, I flipped OMER and Abaye. You're right. Right? Meaning OMER, counts weeks, not days. Sorry, days, not weeks.
Right.
Right. Sorry, I switched Abaye and OMER. But what is the machloket Abaye and OMER? Meaning, according to Tosfot, according to the Rambam, you could just say that the machloket Abaye and OMER is the basic question. Is Sefirat HaOmer nowadays biblical or not? If it is, then you count fully. If it's not, then you count not fully. You count partially. You count days and not weeks. But if you want to hold like Tosfot, then everybody agrees it's rabbinic, and everyone agrees potentially it's a Zecher Mikdash. So then why would you have a machloket as to whether, when you're doing this rabbinically, and whether you're doing it Zecher Mikdash, you should count imperfectly, right? Incompletely. So what do you think? Right? That's the conceptual question I want to analyze. What do you think? Again, assuming that this is Zecher Mikdash, assuming that biblically Sefirat HaOmer depends on the bringing of the Omer, so nowadays it's rabbinic. So then why would you say that you should either, possibility one, commemorate the Mikdash by counting exactly the same way you did in the time of the Mikdash, or two, say that the way to commemorate the Mikdash is to count in a different, less complete way. What do you think?
Well, if you're saying it's the Zecher Mikdash, right? Then to do the Zecher Mikdash, you would have to do exactly what they did then. I mean, that would be the Zecher Mikdash. This way it would remind you of the Mikdash. But at the same time, you can say, since we don't have the Mikdash, then we on purpose should count differently.
Good.
And to commemorate the fact that it's not there. Good.
So now let me push you farther, right? Let's try to sharpen that point. Okay? So one possibility is to commemorate the Mikdash, we do it the way you did in the Mikdash. In other words, in what way do you want to commemorate the Mikdash?
Right. So you're either commemorating the fact that there is a Mikdash or that there was, versus the fact that it was destroyed.
Okay, good. So let's keep pushing it. So one possibility is to say the way that you commemorate the Mikdash potentially is by recreating it, right, or reliving it, continuing the exact same way, right. The other is to say, let's be careful. Is it that you don't have to do exactly that because it's a mere commemoration, or that you dafka want to do something that is incomplete? Because why would you say you dafka want to do something incomplete? What would the logic be there?
Well, how could you do something complete if the Mikdash isn't there?
Meaning there are. So let's try to put this in English, and then let's see if we can prove it. Okay, let's see if we can try to understand this. Sometimes when we commemorate things, or commemorate the Mikdash, let's say, we are specifically trying to make ourselves feel like something is lacking. Right? We're trying to mourn the Mikdash.
Right.
Give me an example of something that we do like that.
Tisha B'Av?
Yeah. All the Tisha B'Av related things. Perfect, right? Anything we do in the 3 weeks, Shavasar B'Tammuz, all the fast days related to the Mikdash, Tisha B'Av, putting ashes on the head at a wedding, etc. Those are all quote-unquote commemorations of the Mikdash, but they're very specific. They're mourning commemorations. They're not trying to relive the Mikdash. They're trying to drive the point home that the Mikdash is not here. And that requires a response. But then there are other types, such as examples where the way that we commemorate the Mikdash is not by doing something which is a morning practice, which drives the point home the Mikdash isn't here, but it's rather we recreate, we try to keep the flame of the Mikdash alive, as it were, by doing what they do. So, for example, give me an example. Take an example from Pesach. Right? Korech is an interesting example. Right? Zecher Mikdash kehillel, kein asa Hillel. Right? We eat the sandwich because this is what Hillel did in the time of the Beit HaMikdash. Now, given his had the Karban Pesach, but the emphasis in our formulation seems to be we're trying to mimic him. Right? We're not trying to do it incomplete. We're doing it as complete as possible to feel like we're in the Mikdash. Or, as we'll see, taking the lulav and esrog outside the Beit HaMikdash every day of Sukkot. Right? There you're not doing something incomplete, dafka the opposite. You're doing what they did in the Mikdash outside the Mikdash by taking the lulav and esrog daily. So it could be that the machloket, according to Tosfot, is not, is this a commemoration of the Mikdash, but rather, what type of commemoration is this? Meaning, what is the best way of commemorating the Mikdash? So, I mentioned this yesterday from Toso, but if you look at source 3 that I gave you, right, you'll see that the majority position is that, indeed, I can share the screen, right, the majority position, as the Ron notes, is that, indeed, this is an argument about the type of Derabanan it is, not whether it's Derabanan. And that's what he says. Rov mefarshim maskimim. This is 3 here. Sefirat HaOmer achshav deleka hava v'lo karban eina elami derabanan ba'alma zecher mikdash k'da'amar OMER hatam. Most people agree, not the Rambam, but most mefarshim agree that according to everybody, Sefirat HaOmer is only derabanan. Okay, we'll come back to this Sfat Emet later. But to make the point, what we need to do is analyze the different types of things we might mean by the words Zecher Mikdash. So as we said, one type of Zecher Mikdash is mourning. Right? One way we remember the Mikdash is mourning. And the classic sugya for this I gave you is Bava Batra Samach Amud Bet. So, again, you have the English and the Hebrew here, if you want, in number 4. You can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, ein misaydin, ve'ein mechayrin, ve'ein mirfaychin bizman hazeh. Right? You don't plaster your house fully, you don't tile fully, you don't paint, etc. as a sign of mourning for the Beit HaMikdash. Tana Rabbanan. Kishacharav habayit bashniya, rabu prushin b'Yisrael shelo lechol basar, shelo leshtot yain. When the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, there were those people who said, we should never eat meat again, we should never drink wine. Nitbal and Rabbi Yeshua, so Rabbi Yeshua went to them and Amar Lahem, Bini, Banai, my sons. Why aren't you eating meat? Why aren't you drinking wine? Amrulo, they said to him, Nochal basar shemimenu makrivin al gabe mizbeach, v'achshav batel. Should we eat meat? We used to bring meat on the mizbeach. We don't have a mizbeach. Should we drink wine? We used to do wine libations at the Beit HaMikdash, and now we don't have it. We need to mourn it. So Amar Lahem in Cain lechem lo nochal shekvar batlu min achot. He said, okay, there were grain offerings in the Mikdash also. The Karban HaOmer, the Shtei HaLechem, the Lechem HaPanim. So you want to stop eating bread too? They said, hey, great idea. We won't eat bread either. Efshar b'peirot, we'll eat fruit. He said, fruit? Perot lo nochal. Shekvar batlu bikurim. What do you mean? There were fruit offerings. There was the bikurim. They said, okay, fine. Efshar b'perot acherim, we'll have fruit that weren't brought bikurim, not the Shivat Aminim. We'll live on oranges and bananas. Okay, good. He said, really? Mayim lo nishteh. How about water? You don't want to have water? Water. We also had water. We had the water libation on Sukkot. Shekvar batal nisa chamayim. Shatku. They were quiet. They had nothing to say. So Amar Lahan, he said to them, listen, Banai, my children, Bova Omer Lochem Shlo Tabel Kolikar Yefshar. I can't tell you not to mourn at all. Shekvar Nigzar Gzeira. Because, the decree happened. The Beit HaMikdash is destroyed. We got to do something. Uli Tabel Yoter Midai Yefshar. But I also can't tell you to mourn too much. Because Yefshar, She'en goes in Gzeira Tzirulim Ken Robat Tzirei Cholin Lamod Ba. Because we can't have a decree that the majority of Klal Yisrael can't handle. Dichtiv b'meiratem norim votimatem kovim agoy kulo. Ella kach amru chachamim sadadam et beito basir u'mishayer bo davar mu'at. Rather, what should you do? Plaster your house. Just leave a little bit off. That's the way to do it. Meaning, you can't have complete mourning. You need to do something. So what do we learn from this Gemara? So let's see what you learn from this Gemara. So point one that we learn from this Gemara is that one way we commemorate the Beit HaMikdash is by mourning. But there's two ways of reading Rabbi Yeshua. Okay? What?
It's specifically not doing what they did.
Good. So how does he disagree? Meaning they think the way to mourn is basically anything that has to do with the Mikdash, cut it out of our lives. So that we feel the loss, we feel the pain. Right? That's the way they conceptualize mourning. But Rabbi Yeshua argues. Right? What does he say?
No.
There are two ways of reading it. What are they?
You shouldn't do the exact thing, right? So you shouldn't do what they did, but not completely.
Good. So there's two ways. One is a depressing way, which is to say as follows. Rabbi Yeshua agrees that mourning should really mean cut out all happiness from your life, cut out anything Mikdash related from your life so you feel the loss. Elamai, you can't do it because you'll die. You won't have water, you won't have food, you won't have anything. You won't have a house. So what can we do? We limit it to lesser things. But fundamentally, he agrees that the right way to mourn is to cut things out of your life as much as possible. It's just that he disagrees that it's going to be possible to cut everything out of the Mikdash from your life totally. That's one possibility. That's a depressing way of reading Rabbi Yeshua. There's another way of reading him, though, which is that he disagrees fundamentally. He thinks that they thought that what was the way to mourn the Mikdash is to cut everything out of your life. And when he says, no, paint your house but leave a little bit, he's not saying, I really agree with you that you shouldn't paint your house at all, but we can't survive. So what can you do? What's he saying? The better way to commemorate the Mikdash is to transform it into mere symbolism. Meaning, I disagree fundamentally. Don't cut everything Mikdash out of your life. Do symbolic acts. Cut symbolic things out of your life that will remind you that the Mikdash is there. Right? It's not that he thinks that it's just impossible to mourn fully. He thinks that that's not the right way of going about it. We prefer symbolic mourning to complete misery on principle. Now, you understand those two ways of formulating it?
Yeah.
Again, right? Just to make it clear, meaning, is it that Rabbi Yeshua fundamentally thinks that when we're mourning the Mikdash, ideally you should cut as much out of your life as possible? It's just that we know you can't do it because you'd die, you wouldn't have a house, you wouldn't have food. But really he thinks the best way to mourn is to cut everything out of your life. Or is he saying, no, I just disagree. You think that the right way to mourn is to cut entire categories of experience out of your life? Like, don't eat fruit, don't eat... It's not true. The best way that we want you to mourn the Mikdash is to pick particular acts that remind you about the Mikdash, that make you feel a little bit sad. But fundamentally, we want you to live life. We want you to continue and keep little symbolic things on your plate. So let me give you an example here of what it would look like if you thought that Rabbi Yeshua agreed with number one. Okay? What would it look like if you thought that Rabbi Yeshua fundamentally agreed with the Chachamim, with these, these Chachamim that Yeshua was agreeing with, and just thought that practically it was impossible, okay? So, if you continue here at number 5, let's focus on this line. So, the Gemara says that one of the things they shouldn't do is here. Since, let's read it from here. Tanya, Amar Yishmael ben Elisha, Miyom shecharav beit HaMikdash, din hu shenigzar al atzmeinu shelo lachal basar v'lo lishtot yain. Really, we shouldn't eat meat, we shouldn't have wine. Ella ein gozin zer al tzibur elen kein rov tzibur yichol lamod ba. But we can't make a decree that no one can handle. Umiyom shepashda malchut harishah shegozeret aleinu gzerot ra'ot v'kashot. And since the time when they set up gzerot against us that we can't keep the Torah, they don't let us keep the Torah. They don't let us do bris milah, pidyon ben, or bris milah, something like that. We should stop getting married and stop having children. And therefore, we should never. This way, the Jewish people would die out, and they won't be suffering from not being able to keep the Torah. Why didn't we do it? But leave the Jews alone. It's better they do things by accident than on purpose.
That's a bit extreme.
Very extreme. So, the Gemara in number 6 tells you that the halacha on the books is that nasa isha v'sha ima eser shanim v'lo yalda eno rashai levatel gersha muter linaseh lacher rashai hasheni l'shot ima eser shanim. If you marry a woman and she doesn't have kids for 10 years, you're supposed to get divorced. But that's the halacha in the Mishnah. So nowadays, we don't do this. Why don't we do this? So one possibility, which is found in the Rivash, is that we don't coerce about it. But maybe it really is the halacha on the books. But if you look here in the Mordechai, number 7, he says something shocking. And he says, Chen perish Ravi Avon Zikeni, V'chein matzadi v'shem Rabbi Bar Shmuel, the Garsinan Bechezkat Habatim Dinu Shenigzar Al Atzmenu Le'Tabel Yerushalayim Shel Yisa Isha V'Shlo Banim. Really, nowadays you shouldn't be getting married. Ela she'en goes in Gzeira L'Tzibor Lam Ken Rov Tzibor Yecholim Lamod Bo. But we didn't force it because people can't handle it. L'chol ha'pachot ilkach l'chol ha'pachot en kofin lo tzi v'afilu be'eretz Yisrael chayav latin k'tuba v'gam tanai k'tuba. And therefore, nowadays we don't force you to get divorced. Why? Because really, you should never have gotten married and you shouldn't be having children. It's just, what choice do we have? People can't live like that. But if your wife doesn't have children, we're not going to force you to get divorced because you really shouldn't be having children anyways. So the Mordechai has this incredibly wild read, which is that, right? How does he understand this? He understands it clearly like formulation 1, right? Which is ideally, mourning should be complete, cut out anything that to do with the Mikdash, cut out normal life, don't get married, don't have children, don't eat food. It's just that you can't handle it. But if in a particular instance you could manifest it, meaning someone got married and his wife didn't have children, okay, so now we just don't tell you to get divorced, and mamela, you won't have children. So then, that's fine, right? We encourage that. But if you take the other formulation, which is that no, lichatchila, we don't want you to have complete mourning, we want you to do something symbolic, so then we would say this isn't true. Okay?
Isn't that what the Mishnah is saying?
Which Mishnah?
Isn't the Mishnah proof that you need to have children, so that it's more symbolic than...
Correct. That's the symbol read of the Mishnah, right? The Mishnah doesn't say this is not true post-Mikdash. Right? The Mordechai is a chiddush to say that that's only pre-Mikdash. But post-Korban Habayit, Dafka, this halacha doesn't apply, right? That's a very radical read. Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's take these ideas and let's bring it back. Say it again?
If his chiddush is true that this is only that post Mikdash, it doesn't work, then why would it be taught in the first place?
Maybe because it's the theoretical law. Maybe because the Mishnah records traditions from before Korban Habayit. Right? The Mishnah sometimes records positions from before Korban Habayit.
That we specifically don't follow today.
Well, that's what he'd have to say. It'd be a bit hard. You're right. It'd be a bit difficult.
Yeah.
With this in mind, let's come back to our sugya. So again, we said that it could be that the machlokes OMER and Abaye is whether counting Sefirat HaOmer nowadays is d'oraisa or only a Zecher Mikdash. But the other way is to say, what type of d'Rabbanan or what type of Zecher Mikdash is it? Right? It could be that it's the type of Zecher Mikdash where it's a mere symbolism, but what do you want to do? It's the way we mourn in our personal lives, right? Like we eat meat or we drink wine, we paint our house, but we leave a square left over. So we live our life mostly normal, but we diminish it a little bit to drive home the point that the Mikdash isn't here. So it could be that that's what OMER is saying Sefirat HaOmer is. Right? Namely, that we continue to count Sefirat HaOmer, but we leave a little bit out. That even in our mitzvah life, we diminish our mitzvah life to make us feel that pain, right? That little pang, right? Fundamentally, we mostly continue living our life, but we leave a little bit out of our mitzvah life to remind us that the Mikdash isn't here. But then what does Abaye think? So as we said, Abaye may be talking about a different type of Zecher Mikdash, which is not one in which we diminish our life, but where we commemorate the Mikdash by doing what?
Symbolism.
So not mere symbolism, by showing that you do it by reliving the Mikdash, by saying the Mikdash isn't forgotten because we can take the Mikdash and continue to live as if the Mikdash was around, meaning we can keep those rituals alive even without the Mikdash. Right? That's how we're going to commemorate the Mikdash. Or in other words, the machloket is this a mere Zecher Mikdash? Right? That keyword, mere commemoration, or is it, right? It's like, you ever go to those, reenactments of the Civil War?
Yeah, all the time, Rabbi.
You know how people do that? Sometimes on July 4th, they'll bring cannons and, dress up in, clothes from the 1800s and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, you've never gone to them. Whatever, it's not the point.
No, but I've seen them on TV.
Yeah, okay, fine, you've seen them on TV. Those, right? That's not a commemoration that's a saying, let's relive it, let's reenact it, so to speak. So it could be that the machloket is, how do you want to commemorate the Mikdash? Do you want to do it by making our religious lives incomplete, or by finding ways of keeping the Mikdash alive and complete in our non-Mikdash world? And what I want to show you, and this is a point that many people have made, both academics and traditionalists, is that this type of optimistic commemoration, where you, well, let's put it differently. What do you think the goal is of commemorating the Mikdash? I understand OMER, but commemorate the Mikdash by cutting out some of your ritual life, right? That's meant to make you feel sad. But what would it mean to commemorate the Mikdash by dafka doing exactly what we used to do in the Mikdash without the Mikdash? What is the goal of that type of reenactment, Zecher Mikdash, right? What are you trying to accomplish by commemorating the Mikdash in that way?
You're saying that this is how our life should be, and this is what it will be.
Good. So I called it anticipating and reimagining, right? You're doing two things. One is you're being hopeful that the Mikdash will come back soon, right? It's an anticipatory institution, right? One way of saying it is, look, you should keep doing it as you did in the Mikdash because you believe that the Mikdash is going to be rebuilt any day, and therefore we got to keep up practice, right? That's a different way of commemorating the Mikdash in an optimistic way. The other is to reimagine, meaning it's to prove that life goes on post-Mikdash. So give me an example, right, of number 2, right? Give me an example of number 2. What is a way in which, in our everyday lives, we reimagine the Mikdash and prove that even though we don't have the Mikdash, in a certain sense, it continues on? Give me a statement from Chazal that supports that. Davening, or more specifically, davening where? Davening where? Where do we daven? Hopefully in shul, not nowadays, because we're all not davening in shul. But what do Chazal say about davening in shul? They say that the Batei Midrash and the Batei Kinesiot are Mikdash Ma'at. You ever heard someone say that from the Gemara in Megillah Chavtet? They're a small Beit HaMikdash. Yeah. Right, that's a Gemara. And what is that saying? That's saying that it's not saying that we missed the Mikdash. It's saying at a certain level, we still have the Mikdash. Right? That we have a mini Mikdash. So, there are two reasons where two ways of understanding Zecher Mikdash that would indicate that you should specifically count Sefirat HaOmer without the Beit HaMikdash the exact way you would have in the Beit HaMikdash. One is because you think the way of commemorating the Mikdash is anticipating the rebuilding the Mikdash, and therefore you got to practice. And the other is to say that the best way of commemorating the Mikdash is to reimagine what it could be like to have Mikdash-esque experiences in a non-Mikdash world. Both of those would lead to the conclusion that even if Sefirat HaOmer is Zecher Mikdash, you should do it the way we did in the Beit HaMikdash. And what people have pointed out is that these two models, the anticipatory and the reimagining, Mikdash life post-Mikdash, those seem to be part of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's takanot across the board post Beit HaMikdash. And I want to show you this, okay? So if you look at 8. Barishona haya halulav nital b'mikdash shiva u'mimedina yom echad. Originally, in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, the lulav was taken in the Beit HaMikdash all 7 days of Sukkot, and outside the Beit HaMikdash only on the first day. Mishecharav Beit HaMikdash, Hitkin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai Shehei Lulav Nital B'Medina Shiva Zecher Mikdash. But after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, take the lulav outside the Mikdash every day Zecher Mikdash. V'shehei Yom Hanef Kulo Asur. And that, back to our Omer case, we'll see this again in Menachot, that you shouldn't eat the you shouldn't eat the new grain the entire day of the 16th until the 17th. So then the Gemara says, Uminolan Davdinan Zecher Mikdash. How do you know that you make commemorations on the Mikdash? The Amar Kra, Ki Ele Rucha Lecha, Umakotcha Erpaecha, Num Hashem, Ki Nidchu Karu Lecha Tzion, He Doresh Ein La, Michal Debai Drisha. Because the Pasuk says, I will restore health to you, and I'll heal you of your wounds, said the Lord, because they have called you an outcast. She is Tzion, there's none who cared for her. Which teaches that they need someone to care for it, to pay attention. V'shehei Yom Hanef Kulo Asur. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's second Gzeira, that you shouldn't eat the Omer the entire day of the 16th. My taima. Mehera Yibana Ben HaMikdash. V'yomu Yishtake Melochanu Be'er Mizrach. Avshav Nemi Nechol. The reason was as follows. Because he said, Me'ikra din, you're allowed to eat. If there is a Beit HaMikdash, you can't eat the new grain until you bring the Karban HaOmer. Without the Beit HaMikdash, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, you're allowed to technically eat, Midoraisa, as soon as the 16th, the sun rises on the 16th. But what's the problem? We're worried that if the Beit HaMikdash gets rebuilt and you remember that you used to eat new grain as soon as the sun rose on the 16th, you'll do that even with the Beit HaMikdash before you bring the Karban. So what do? We tell you, don't eat any new grain until the 17th so that you won't mess up when you rebuild the Beit HaMikdash. So now, let me ask you about these two Gzeirot. Okay? The second Gzeirah, that you shouldn't eat the new grain until the 17th, just in case the Beit HaMikdash is rebuilt and you'll forget that you're supposed to wait until the Karban is brought. What type of Zecher Mikdash is that? It's anticipation, right? It's always keep in mind that the Beit HaMikdash might be rebuilt right away, and therefore you always have to do things that will make sure that you get things right when the Beit HaMikdash comes. What about the other one? Right? What about the lulav? That in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, you only took the lulav on Shabbat. On the first day outside the Mikdash. And in the Mikdash, 7 days. And once the Beit HaMikdash is destroyed, you take the lulav every day outside the Beit HaMikdash. What type of Zecher Mikdash is that?
I wouldn't call it mourning either.
Right, it's not mourning. What is it?
Right.
It's recreation, right? It's like the shul. It's dafka, not mourning. It's saying, it's the opposite of mourning. It's saying that despite the fact that the Mikdash isn't here, we can reimagine our lives to contain Mikdash-esque elements even without the Beit HaMikdash. Right? So if you think about it, this type of Gzeira can very well explain how Sefirat HaOmer might be Zecher Mikdash, even though you hold that we do it exactly as we did in the Mikdash. It's exactly what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, that one of the ways that you commemorate the Mikdash is not by mourning, not by making your life incomplete, but is bringing the Mikdash into your non-Mikdash life. Right? Even though you're not Chayav, you count as if the Mikdash were around. Even though it used to be that only the Beit HaMikdash you would take the lulav every day, now that there's no Beit HaMikdash, you need to take that lulav Beit HaMikdash experience into your everyday life. And if you look at 9...
If that's the case, why don't we do something like give korbanot still?
So what I'm trying to show you is that we have different ways that we commemorate the Mikdash. Right? Karbanot is complicated because Karbanot needs Kedusha. Right? There are certain things we can't do. But that wouldn't be a commemoration. Now there are people who believe that, right, this was a big machloket, where Tzvi Hirsch Kalisher thought that Bisman Hazeh you are allowed to bring the Karban Pesach and tried to get people to bring the Karban Pesach even nowadays. But that's not a commemoration.
Aren't they still trying to do that?
There are still people who try to do this, but that's not a commemoration.
Find the Mizbeach, they want to do an Harabayit.
They want to say that you're allowed to bring the Karban on the Mizbeach without a Beit HaMikdash. But that's not a commemoration. Right? That's saying that the mitzvah never stopped. Right? That's not, but we do have elements of this quote, of this continuing, this imagining that we still have Karbanot, and how is that? None of you are my Agada to share. But the last sugyot in Menachot and Daf Kuf Yod say that by saying the Karbanot, or by learning about the Karbanot, it's as if you brought the Karbanot. And we know that Tefillah is partially Zeichel Karbanot. Right? So Dafka, that is this type of Zeichel Mikdash, where you try to commemorate the Mikdash by bringing Mikdash into your non-Mikdash life. If you want to look at another one, I give you here in 9, another Sugya in Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai did the exact same thing by shofar. The Mishnah tells you that Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah Shechal Yot B'Shabbat B'Mikdash Hayu Tokin Avalo B'Medina. On Shabbat in the Beit HaMikdash you are allowed to blow the shofar, but not outside. Mishacharav Beit HaMikdash Hitkin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai Hayu Tokin B'Kol Makom Sheish Bo Beit Din. When there was no Beit HaMikdash, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said you're allowed to blow the shofar wherever you have a Beit Din. And OMER Rabbi Elazar lo hitkar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai ela b'yavne bilvad. So again, what do you see? That Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai has a consistent position. How are you supposed to commemorate the Mikdash? Not by diminishing your religious life, but how? By reliving, by making it as if the Mikdash exists in our non-Mikdash life. The Gemara even tells a story. I once heard from Jonathan Ziring. This is his favorite Gemara because it's evidence of how humor can deal with a complex situation. Or if you look at the Gemara says that Pam Achat Chal Rosh Hashanah Liyot B'Shabbat. So it once happened that Rosh Hashanah fell on Shabbat. Vayu Kol Ha'arin Nitkamsin, and everybody got together. And Amar Lahem Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai Levnei B'Teira Nitka. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, according to his shita, come, let's blow the shofar. Amru lo nidon. He said, let's talk about it. Right? It's not so pashut. It's not obvious you're allowed to blow the shofar on Shabbat outside the Beit HaMikdash. Amr lehem nitka v'achar kach nadon. He said, I got a compromise for you. How about this? We'll blow the shofar this year, and then we'll talk about it for next year. So la'achar shetaku, once they blew the shofar, they agreed to this compromise. Amru lo nadon. They said, so let's talk about it. Amr lahem farnishma karen biyavna v'imishir lachem ha'isa. Sorry, it already happened. There's nothing to talk about it. I win. Right? I win. Right? And there is a certain, irony, outsmarting the opponent here, which is slightly comical. But that's what he does. To show you another manifestation of this position of Yochanan ben Zakkai, if you look at number 10 in the Yerushalmi says that Hakol Modim B'Yom Tov Rishon Shomer Al Netilat Lulav. Everyone agrees that on day 1, the bracha that you say on Lulav is on the taking of the Lulav. Ma Pligin B'Shar Kol Hayamim. But there's a machloket. What bracha do you say on taking the Lulav on the other days? Rabbi Yochanan Omer Al Netilat Lulav. Rabbi Shua ben Levi Omer Al Mitzvat Zkenim. So what do they argue about? Rabbi Yochanan says that every day that you take the lulav, you make the bracha on taking the lulav. And what does Rabbi Shua ben Levi say? You make the bracha that we keep the dirabbanans, that we keep rabbinic law. So there are a lot of ways of explaining this machlokes, right? Whether you think that the nature of rabbinic law is a generic obligation to keep the rabbinic law, or that it is instantiated in each action. But in light of what we've been saying, it could be that their machloket is, Rabbi Yochanan says the mitzvah is to recreate the mitzvah of Netilat Lulav every day, and therefore you make that bracha. As opposed to Reshuvah and Levi, who says, nah, this is something else, it's some generic kiyum. So, again, what you see here is that one way of understanding the idea of Zecher Mikdash is this optimistic way of, one, anticipating the Mikdash will be rebuilt, and two is dafka doing exactly what you used to do in the Mikdash to prove that life goes on post Mikdash, and that's a form of Zecher Mikdash, which is keeping the Mikdash alive in your non-Mikdash life. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai seem to make a lifestyle of this, but it could be that that's why we dafka do Sefirat HaOmer, even if it is a Zecher Mikdash and Dirabanan, the exact way we used to do it in the Mikdash. I'll just point out that agadically, this sort of optimistic version of Zecher Mikdash finds other expressions in Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's life. So, for example, in number 11, the Gemara tells you that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, if you remember, he managed to get to Vespasian and have special requests. He didn't ask for the Beit HaMikdash to be saved because he didn't think that would work. But what did he ask for? Yavne v'chachameha. He said, give me Yavne, which you remember is where the Beit Din was and where he said we could mimic the blowing of the shofar of the Beit HaMikdash. So again, you see that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai has this optimistic notion that part of what it means to commemorate the Mikdash is to make sure that life goes on post Mikdash. Another expression of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's optimism can be found in Avot Rabbi Natan. Right, I won't read this source in 12, but everybody knows the story of Rabbi Kiva, that when everybody else was crying when they saw the foxes on the Mikdash, right on Har HaBayit, Rabbi Kiva's laughing because he said this is proof that the prophecies will come true, that the Beit HaMikdash will one day be rebuilt. You know that, Gemara? You've heard this enough times?
No.
No?
Yeah.
You can say no, and then we can read it.
I have not.
Okay, fine. So let's read it quickly. I'll read it in English. Right? The Gemara relates another incident involving those sages. On another occasion, they were ascending to Jerusalem after the destruction of the temple. When they arrived on Mount Scopus and Har Tzofim and saw the site of the temple, they rent their garments in mourning in keeping with the halachic practice. When they arrived at the Temple Mount, they saw a fox that emerged from the site of the Holy of Holies. They began weeping, and Rabbi Kiva was laughing. They said to him, "For what reason are you laughing?" Rabbi Kiva said, "For what reason are you weeping?" They said to him, "This is the place concerning which it is written, and the non-priest who approaches shall die. And now foxes walk in it, and shall we not weep?" Rabbi Kiva said to them, "That's why I'm laughing. As it is written, when God revealed the future to the prophet Isaiah, and I will take to me faithful witnesses to attest, Uriah the priest and Zechariah the son," if I can't even pronounce that in English. Now, what is the connection between Uriah and Zechariah? He clarifies the difficulty. Uriah prophesied during the first temple period, and Zechariah prophesied during the second temple period, as he was among those who returned to Zion from Babylonia. Rather, the verse established that fulfillment of the prophecy of Zechariah is dependent on fulfillment of the prophecy of Uriah. In the prophecy of Uriah, it's written, "Therefore for your sake Zion shall be plowed as a field, and Jerusalem shall become rubble, and the Temple Mount as the high places of a forest, where foxes are found." There's a rabbinic tradition that this was prophesied by Uriah. In the prophecy of Zechariah, it is written, "There shall yet be elderly men and elderly women sitting in the streets of Jerusalem." Until the prophecy of Uriah with regard to the destruction of the city was fulfilled, I was afraid that the prophecy of Zechariah would not be fulfilled, as the two prophecies are linked. Now that the prophecies of Uriah were fulfilled, it is evident the prophecy of Zechariah remains valid. The Gemara adds that the sages said to him, employing the formulation, "Akiva You have comforted us, right? Akiva nichamtanu, Akiva nichamtanu. So here you see Rabbi Akiva as the voice of optimism, right? As I see the destruction, I know that this isn't the end. But if you look, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai also has a similar story, except I want you to pay attention to the difference in the way he does it. And this is in Avot de Rabbi Natan. The Gemara says that the world survives on the acts of loving kindness, right? On chesed, gemilut chasadim. So here's another story. The world originally was built only for the sake of loving kindness. As it states, for I have said, the world is built by loving kindness. Your faithfulness shall you establish in the very heavens. One time, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was leaving Jerusalem, and he saw Rabbi Yeshua going after him, and he saw the temple destroyed. Rabbi Yeshua said, woe to us that this is destroyed, the place where the sins of Israel were atoned for. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, my son, do not be distraught. We have an atonement that's similar to this. And what is it? It is milut chasadim. It's acts of loving kindness. As it says, for I desire loving kindness, not sacrifice. So what do you see according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? What does he do? Again, he says that don't worry about it. The way to deal with Churban Abayit is to convince ourselves that there are still religious things we can do that replace the Beit HaMikdash. So Chesed replaces Karbanot. You used to take the lulav only in the Beit HaMikdash for 7 days, now we do it everywhere. You used to blow the shofar on Shabbat only in the Beit HaMikdash, now we do it wherever there's a Beit Din. And again, what I mentioned before, the Mikdash Ma'at is this line in Megillah, Vayhi lahem Mikdash Ma'at, Amar Yitzchak, Elu Batei Knessia, Batei Midrash, Sheba Bavel. Right, the shuls, they are the Mikdash Ma'at, they're the small Beit HaMikdash, etc. You get another one in Brachot, I don't want to get into. So hold that thought, okay? Now that we've gone through all of these, what I want to do tomorrow is come back and hammer this out in the context of Sefirat HaOmer. Right, because what I've already done is pointed out the possibility that once you understand there are different ways of conceptualizing Zecher Mikdash. Right, there's mourning, there's dafka making our life incomplete, making our ritual life incomplete, right, counting days and not weeks. There's this other optimistic view, which is to say that the best way of commemorating the Mikdash is to make sure that its messages continue to live on, because we A, constantly anticipate the rebuilding of the Mikdash, and B, we dafka do things that convince us the life goes on post the Mikdash, and therefore we try to mimic and reimagine and recreate the Mikdash as our way of commemorating Mikdash. Not by diminishing our religious life, but dafka by living as in a certain way as if the Beit HaMikdash was never destroyed. What I'm arguing is that that might be what the words Zecher Mikdash mean when it comes to Sefirat HaOmer, and that's why even though we think it's Derabanan Lahalacha, and we think it's Zecher Mikdash, we dafka don't diminish it. We dafka count the exact way that we did in the Mikdash. What I want to do is flesh this out just a little bit more in the Omer in a few ways. Right here, I've given you a little piece from the Rav on Sefirat HaOmer, and specifically, I want to deal with this. What I give you here on the last 2 pages is I want to deal with the following question, which is, why don't we say Shehecheyanu when we start counting Sefirat HaOmer? And what I want to argue is that the machloket about why we don't say Shehecheyanu on Sefirat HaOmer depends on these different formulations of the nature of Zecher Mikdash when it comes to Sefirat HaOmer. So tomorrow, if you can try to look at this Sfat Emet, which was source number 2. What?
Shehecheyanu is not dependent on Derabanan.
So we'll see. That might be the answer. So what I want to do is see the different shitot. There's a Balamor that I gave you. So what I want you to do is try to read source 2, which is the Sfat Emet, and then from 16 and on, which is really just the summary of the Rav, the Balamor, and a summary from the Daf al Adaf of different explanations from the Griz and from Yechiel Michal Feinstein why we don't say Shehecheyanu or Sefirat HaOmer. That will touch on some of these different formulations of the nature of Zecher Mikdash by Sefirat HaOmer. Okay, So we'll do that tomorrow, okay?